Talk News TV. Last night, if you were watching us, we were talking about the effects or the roots of current events. That was the title of the show last night. Now, why? Well, simply put, history plays a very big part of what we are doing today. If you talk of corruption, if you talk of ill governance, you will notice that most of the rebel groups, or those that who are not necessarily for pro-government, obviously, have not only been just putting down this specific administration, but those that have passed. Now, it does not necessarily mean that they are fighting every single administration, but simply put, they are, well, maybe fighting within themselves. Now, how does that really happen? Now, I'm not going to try and be a theologist or some type of psychologist, but basically, the facts are history does repeat itself. Now, if you say that, what I'm trying to put out here is history plays a big role in what we are today. Now, going on that very same subject for consistency, tonight we have with us Jose Maria Bonifacio M. Escoda, known as Bonnie. Now, Bonnie wrote a book some time ago, and it's been popularized and has been taken up by the academe. The book tonight is Warsaw, the Warsaw of Asia, the Rape of Manila. Magandang gabi, Bonnie. Thanks a lot for coming here. Bonnie, before we go forward, now you're a TV personality. You're not exactly the evangelist, but you are helping out in a cable program on Destiny as well. Ano yun?
The Divine Mercy Channel since 2002. It was covered by Global Destiny.
Exactly. Pari ka ba?
No, just
Hindi naman.
Frustrated lang.
He's not an evangelist, but he did help out, and he does have a lot of know-how when it comes to broadcast TV. Now, let's go straight to this. I won't hold this back. But Bonnie, last night, we talked about the ill effects of today's current events. Basically, our guest, who was from the Council on Philippine Affairs, Boy Saicon, who is known to be, Pastor Saicon, no?
Yes.
Known to be relatively political.
Yes.
And he's been studying with Professor Yatko, Dr. Yatko. Yes. And he brings back, or he brought onto us on TV, on broadcast TV, the effects of history and culture in today's environment and the way people are. But before we get into all of that, tell us briefly exactly what is Warsaw of Asia, the Rape of Manila. There you go.
Yeah, that's a book. Actually, it's a history.
Book to.
Of Manila. Especially, it's on the old Manila. And 3/4 of it is about the war in Manila. It's when the Japanese arrived and the liberation of Manila, the bloody liberation of Manila, in which...
Ironic, bloody liberation.
Yes.
So the liberation, the bloody liberation.
It's actually a Pyrrhic liberation.
Yes, it is, isn't it?
Because there were more civilians, innocent civilians, who were killed than the enemy.
That's when the Americans came in to take out the Japanese.
Yes.
Okay. And that's when Manila was actually torn apart.
Yes.
And bombed.
Yeah.
What does this book say? Why did you depict the Warsaw? Because it was basically the war zone.
Warsaw is the capital of, not the capital, of Poland.
Yes, Poland, where they had all the unrest, civil unrest.
And military leaders as well as politicians referred as the most destroyed city during the Second World War.
Poland.
Yeah, and MacArthur even used that phrase, Manila is the Warsaw of Asia.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And actually, strictly speaking, Manila is was the most destroyed city than Warsaw.
Mas grabe pa.
Because Manila was the center, was the political center. Everything was here, unlike Warsaw.
Okay.
And we were actually politically, economically paralyzed during that time. Mm-hmm. Even our values were affected during that. There was, I also mentioned about the destruction of values, the change of values.
So it wasn't just the buildings, it wasn't just the physical destruction.
Yes.
It's how the Filipino changed because of the ill effects of the bloody liberties.
It affected the moral fiber of the society because the people in Manila, as I was told by my parents and others whom I interviewed, they had different set of values.
Ibang-iba noon.
Meron silang delikadesa.
That's gone out the window.
Yeah.
Okay.
And politicians had a strong moral fiber, and there were few corrupt maybe, but the culture was different. There were people of dignified people. Aside from they were all almost Spanish-speaking during the time.
Are you trying to say that history, because of basically what happened because of the destruction, umiba talaga ang Pilipino, and since then we suffer that shock?
Yes.
Until now.
Until
50
now.
years later.
Because, the foundation was shocked.
Okay.
Hindi baling buildings can be restored. Like Intramuros was restored finally in 1980, no? The walls and everything, but they're ruins. But the effect of war, until now, I noticed it among those whom I interviewed.
Yes.
Some of them are still suffering for what we call in psychology post-traumatic stress syndrome.
Okay, they're still at it. They're still back there during that period.
And I think, and going back, I realized there's something obvious why a dictator, sorry to mention that, was allowed, why people were passive.
And they allowed to be managed and dictated upon.
And the people, because I was an activist during that time in 1970, I was a member of the Kabataang Makabayan in Adamson.
Under Nilo Tayag.
Yeah, Nilo Tayag was...
I was the voice also. I was used in LaSalle because of my big voice.
The time of Santa Maria, no?
Santa Maria, correct.
I said, it's totally different during the time. And people were afraid that they might go hungry, like the Japanese period. The last days of the Japanese period when people they're dying of hunger in Manila. The starvation was there. So they started hoarding rice, even mongos, sacks of mongos, sardines, because they were still affected by the war. And my parents and my mother was still alive during the time, said, Bonnie, you don't know what the war is all about.
My father's told me a number of stories as well. Let's go back. When the Americans came, first they were here, the Spanish were pushed aside, first the Americans were here before the Japanese pulled out MacArthur. Let's roll some of those pictures. Bonnie was nice enough to bring some videos that we can insert as he explains a lot of these videos. And some of these first few shots and the videos I've seen were Americans who were actually helping out in building. It's like the engineering team. This would be about the early 40s, no? Can we roll that video? I think we can. There you go. This is already during the war period. Maybe you can explain this, Bonnie, during this period.
I think this is a training. They were training the Filipinos.
Tinuturuan tayo?
I think this is training period.
Okay, who would this be?
This is General Douglas MacArthur.
Fantastic footage.
Yes. Without his famous
you can see it from there.
Cap, no? Without his famous Persian cap and tear-eye glasses.
Yes, without it. Bata pa, no?
Yeah, he was around 60 years old during that time.
Okay.
Because he arrived, he was 65 years old during the Battle of Manila. And this is the training of the PMA cadets. That's patterned after America's
Was this
West
here
Point.
in Metro Manila or was this in Baguio na?
In Baguio, they showed it.
So where it really is now. Nice, proud bunch of soldiers. Now that's us.
That is
Corregidor.
Corregidor, they were training.
Corregidor to. My gosh, you really went out of your way to get all these pictures.
Those are the batteries, the famous batteries of Corregidor that were used, no?
Yes.
Around
to bombard, to keep the ships.
Those are the guns that annihilated more than 10,000 Japanese.
My God.
And so many airplanes were destroyed.
Yeah, I've been to this site in Intramuros.
This is Intramuros.
Intramuros.
Outside Fort Santiago before it was
Fort
destroyed.
Santiago, yes.
This is ROTC cadets.
Okay.
And the airplanes in our
these are the old bombers.
Yeah.
Now, during this period, the Filipinos worked very closely with the Americans, and there was some type of a sense of security with the Americans being around. Is this before or after? This is right before the Japanese came in.
Before, around 2 years before the Japanese arrived, and they were sensing there might be an invasion.
They were already sensing there would be an invasion.
And even Carlos P. Romulo, who was then the manager of managing or the publisher of the El Debate or the DMHM group of companies, was sent by Quezon to spy actually the Japanese. And he warned, he came over and he said, it's inevitable that the Japanese will arrive in the Philippines and we will not be able to defend our shores.
My.
Okay,
but the Americans seem to be...
Those are the torpedoes being prepared.
Actually, mukhang ready naman sila no? Kaya lang they were overpowered.
Not so ready because our guns and our armaments, armed forces, was inadequate actually. It was not almost the modern one, and that's the conflict between Quezon and the Americans during the Commonwealth.
Okay.
Americans only gave us a meager budget, around 16 million, to modernize our military. So Quezon went out of his way and got from the treasury, our own treasury of the Commonwealth, to modernize our equipment.
Was he successful? No. Or not in time?
Not in time. And that conflict was costly because MacArthur, because of this conflict, out of prudence, MacArthur resigned from MacArthur, General Douglas MacArthur, was offered a position in the United States again, but he refused it. He decided to stay in the Philippines with Quezon as an advisor.
That's the part I know of. He was already basically out. He refused the position, came back, and that's about the timing when the Japanese came in. Now, we have more footage that will come across that you will find interesting. And very quickly, Bonnie, you're a teacher now, basically. Where do you teach?
Adamson University for the past 27 years.
My gosh, your students must get a real kick out of you.
Maybe one of them is your floor D or director.
Kaya pala nag-guest natin si Bonnie. Sam is our floor director now. She's done a good job because this is really an interesting topic. Now, we have a lot of photos we want to show you and more footage as we go along. Now, what we're trying to do here is trying to bring you back the reality of what war was in the early 40s. So we were there with the Spanish for 300 odd years. Then the Japanese came in, and then the Americans came in and pushed them to the side. This is exactly where we are. Now we're going to take a short break. But when we come back, we'll take it from there. And then we will try and work out the details of how devastation and one's history can catch up, if not keep up with you, over decades and decades and decades. And as you called it, post-traumatic stress syndrome. There you go. Alam mo, iba na talaga professor eh. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Adamson University and some universities before. But in third second year. When I teach psychology, it's second year. I finished AB psychology in Adamson also. That's why I can teach.
The effects of war, how it affects us today, and what do you know of your past? Let's tackle these issues as we go along. We've got Bonnie Escoda. Bonnie, let's roll some of those, the video that Bonnie took along. These are nice shots of now the Japanese coming in. Let's try and stay on the track of a quick history with this footage. Let's roll that footage now. There you go. Explain this to us,
This
please,
is General
Bonnie.
Homa.
Homa, okay.
And this was the parade in which people were forced to participate.
Grabe, mukhang Hitler, ano? They were forced to participate.
Yes.
So the era of intimidation has begun. The Indian community?
The Japanese community, well, that was not forced. They love it, the Japanese community.
Of course.
Most of them were actually spies. They arrived here, the second batch in late 1930s, pretending to be gardener.
Sino mga ito? Who are these characters?
These are the Filipinos who served under the Japanese.
So these are wala naman legislator nun eh. Wala naman legislative yan eh. These are the local government.
Jose P. Laurel,
okay.
Claro M. Recto, Benigno Aquino Sr. That's Jose P. Laurel.
Okay.
Actually, they depict him as a collaborator, but actually, according to my father, he was gutsy one. He helping a lot of Filipinos escape death. And even spoke Filipino in order to emphasize something so that the Japanese will not understand it.
What he was saying. Wow.
Okay.
Guts, huh? Guts. Real guts. Now, this must be in Rojas Boulevard, no?
Yes.
Okay, we have this photo. Bano? Mga Pilipino ito.
Yeah. The Japanese came here pretending to help us in our economy and Asian. Actually, they stole our rice, the best the beef, the pork, and they brought it to the
Japan.
starving. The Japanese were starving during that time. Actually, they were running out of food, and they took the lion's share.
They pillared the economy, took all our stuff.
And they brought it to Japan, including some of our technology here, like Adamson University. The research materials were all brought to Japan.
You're kidding, ha?
Yeah.
Pinag-aralan pa tayo. Kinuha mismo yun, ha?
Chemistry, the latest in chemistry, electronics, metallurgy were brought to Japan,
Okay.
including
What island is this now? Where are we now?
Corregidor, I think.
Corregidor. Magigera na ito. Mukhang ito na, no? Nagbabanggaan na sila. Amazing how this old equipment... there you go. Look how huge those guns are. If you see them in front. Where is this now? Still here in Luzon.
Yes.
We're still in Luzon. This is Corregidor.
Doing its last stand.
Here we go. The devastation begins here.
I would like also to correct what historians committed an error, that the surrender
Yes.
of Corregidor was not on the 6th of May. It was on the 7th.
On the 7th.
I wrote an article about it in my daily bulletin, and it was on the 7th that they surrendered. 6th was just a truce, and truce is different from a ceasefire.
From a ceasefire. Yeah. So here the Japanese have taken over.
They blackmailed actually General Wainwright.
Hindi makalis.
Si Wainwright was not